things up a little bit. We're going to do a little bit more kind of videos showing you what is currently happening in both gardens, the reasons why, a lot of the ideas, some of the projects, just to bring you into it. And it's going to be kind of very current, so it's going to be things that have happened within the previous week or two, and the idea is just to open up discussions to see what you're doing and to see whether our experiments at the end of the year are going to turn out well or not. This video I want to focus on how we're going to use perennials on this site to really bring a lot of life, to bring a lot of maturity, but also a lot of food. So at the moment we've got a flock of seagulls just flying over. This is a damson Merriweather that is started flowering. It smells absolutely stunning. It reminds me of just how exciting this time of year is. Damson is something that you prune usually towards late spring. That's why some of the shapes are a little bit funny. I've just got some peas growing up here. This damson, you can see that the growth habit is very, very different. And so when it comes to pruning, this is all gonna kind of tidy it all up. But I think the thing that's nice about trees, and it's the same thing with a small garden, if you choose certain rootstocks that are lower growing, they are a real kind of impact statement to the garden. They're real center focus. They add so much character. They're a permanent structure. And that's really what we want to do. This whole site was an open field to begin with. And so the idea of using trees is to actually add a little bit of vertical structure, some interest into what we're doing. The other thing though is that perennials is such a broad spectrum. So we've got our herb garden over here, which was just absolutely stunning last year. This here is, I'm hoping it's going to come back. Yeah, wood is looking green. This is the blackcurrant sage. I am going to prune it back and tame it a little bit. But the blackcurrant sage was absolutely incredible. These beds have lowered down a bit, but I actually don't mind. I'm not planning to fill them back up, just because the herbs themselves are going to grow big. And the only thing that we're going to do in terms of fertility for these is think about adding some leaves or some grass clippings, because of being perennials, one of the benefits of perennials is they require far less fertility than an annual crop requires. And so that's kind of a nice thing. That's the thing that I do like about perennials, is that you don't need to worry about their kind of compost needs. Amazing chocolate mint here, which I'm very excited about. Just the smell of it is incredible. And yeah, mint is a funny one where it will take over, but I think in some instances using mint as a ground cover crop actually holds a lot of potential. And so one of the ideas, this here is we're creating a soft fruit hedge, and we've mulched it with wood chip. But part of me is thinking that actually, if you have a corner of the garden and it's more of a physical boundary, using mint a bit as a kind of green cover crop underneath some soft fruit could bring a lot of benefits. Don't know why there's a daffodil from strimming. It just wedged itself up in this apple tree. This is a Arthur Turner. One of my favourite things that we did last year was we planted 5 apple trees just as a mini orchard. Apparently you need 3 apple trees or 3 fruit trees to deem it an orchard, which I think, you know, is quite nice. It's a bit like 3's a crowd, so it's quite easy to remember it that way. The thing that was really important is, well, for how I feel, is creating different areas within the garden to get different feels. And so what we've got behind the camera and off to the side is a car park. And a car park is never going to be a beautiful visual interest. But what you can do is soften the impact of a car park by adding different perennials. This is another apple tree. I believe, yeah, this is green sleeves on a MM106 rootstock. It's growing really nicely. Got some flower buds that are about to come through. But I think when people come through to visit the site, we've got these apple trees just to like soften the blow a little bit. And some of these trees are getting a lot of nutrients from this pile of dom that was kindly donated from the farm, actually just over my shoulder. So they had some spare cow manure to bring over, and so we've been using that for the annuals. As a site, it's so important that we're in kind of control of fertility and to reduce our dependence on needing to buy in compost. And so using such a local resource where the travel distance is about half a mile is always something I'm happy with. We'll head over here, because over this way is where we're going to be creating a bit of a kind of flower garden. And it's all very kind of brutal, where we had the digger to create this horseshoe shape. These daffodils though, coming through, absolutely stunning. And one of the things that I absolutely have always wanted my whole life is a magnolia. We've actually got 3 magnolias. These are from direct plants. Fantastic quality tree that's come through. There's a link down below. This magnolia is called Stellata. And so an absolute impact that this will create as it grows to fill in this space, which is quite flat, especially with the terraces. But the thing about magnolia is it produces flowers, which you can use for infusions, to make syrups, to make kombucha, etc. Sam's done a lot of work with magnolia, and so we'll put a couple of links down with how you can use this flower. And rather than having to go and ask people to use their magnolia flowers, we can now we're growing this tree not just for aesthetics, but also as a food crop. So this site is going to be so much more than just food. It's about everything that interlinks with food. And so you think about going foraging, you need a forage basket to put everything in. And that's exactly what these 3 different willow beds are for. So we've got 6 different varieties of basket willow. So the great thing about willow, you just stick a peg in the ground and it starts growing. All of these shoots are starting to come out. We've put down, this is a starch base. So this is a fully biodegradable mulch, paper mulch, from Mulch Organic. And after 3 years, it's just going to break down. You can then put the rest of it on the compost bin. No use of plastic whatsoever. These are going to be, they're going to look stunning once they start growing and developing. Give it 2 or 3 years. Like with any perennial, wait a couple of years and then the benefits in terms of visuals really start coming through. And so yeah, looking forward to having this as a different harvest, to be able to use basket willow to create baskets, plates, bowls, all sorts of things. Hopefully that Sam can have a lot of fun with. And we put this willow here because the thing about permaculture is you've got to take inspiration from nature. And if it's working in nature, how can we make it work here? Well, all behind me here is a load of willow that is just growing wild. We've been chopping off a lot of it to turn into ramial chipwood. This is some willow that we put in last year, some more basket willow, and this is just a hybrid willow. Most of it has been cut back. We've actually just left a few just to actually compare the different growth rates. So all the growth is coming through, and this is going to create a nice kind of shelter belt. And we've got all of this willow that is just growing, where we chop it off, chip it, and we use it to create ramial chip wood. So 2 days ago, got this really cool delivery from Direct Plants, lots of perennials. A good thing to understand about permaculture is if you're creating a new site, it's absolutely okay to go in with some machinery, do some earthworks, if it's going to create a long-term benefit. We've done a lot of that, and so this year is really about softening that blow to start to kind of heal the landscape a bit. And the way to do that usually is by adding a bunch of perennials. And so heal in terms of the soil, we can add trees, etc., like magnolias that create mycorrhizal fungi associations, but also heal aesthetically, like this honeysuckle here, that's going to look absolutely stunning growing up. Not even sure what we're going to grow it up yet, but really going to be beautiful. Within here, we've got all sorts of different soft fruit. So I'm going to pull this one out. This here is a blueberry, Liberty blueberry. And so those are going to be planted up in pots. They like a little bit more of an acidic style of soil. So we're going to plant those up in pots, and I'm actually going to use pine needles to help add acidity rather than kind of being reliant on buying ericaceous compost, because wherever possible, if I can get a natural source rather than buying it from a garden centre, then that is music to my ears. Another one here, Josterberry. Josterberry, I believe it's a cross between a gooseberry and a blackcurrant. It grows really quite large as a soft fruit, larger than a blackcurrant bush, and it's basically giant blackcurrants. So adding these in to our linear food forest, which I'll show after this, is going to add a lot of structure, and we can easily propagate them just by cuttings. There's all sorts of other things, jasmine, etc. We've got a couple of different grapevines as well, just again adding structure, but this is going to be really nice. Now you might be wondering, what are these like little pots here? This is just been dropped off by our colleague Neil, used coffee grounds that we're going to add into our compost bin. So we're always looking around what's available in our area, just grab it whenever we can, drop it off, and always going to be something that we can use in the garden. This is a flowering cherry. It was put in last week. Another one just over there. The idea is very much, in terms of any kind of landscape, be it a farm or an ornamental garden, you want it to be a place where naturally you're drawn to, where you want to go, where you want to be there, even if the primary focus is producing food. If you can create a space that brings you joy, then that's half of the battle. You can just chill out and have a lot of fun. So this flowering cherry is going to act as a nice welcome to our eventual agroforestry project that is going to consist of this top 5 acres. And I want to draw your attention to the stunning ash tree, which is what this site is named. Dan Ronen, under the ash, Welsh for under the ash. Such a fantastic shape, and the final ash tree of a part of a hedgerow. Then we've put in these cob nuts. We've put in about 15 cob nuts that are going to grow big. These are going to serve 2 purposes. Obviously the cob nuts for eating. Fingers crossed we haven't seen too many grey squirrels about, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. But the other thing as well, these can be coppiced, and it's creating extra material for creating ramial chipped wood. This is coming to a part where I'm getting very excited about, because we're entering a linear food forest that's heavily inspired by a couple of trips that I've done to Tapanoth Farm up in Aberdeenshire in Scotland. And so essentially this is going to be a road that is going to stay a grass road, and along the south side we've got this linear food forest starting here. And the thing that works for a linear food forest in a climate like the UK is that you get maximum sun exposure. One of the tricky things about a food forest, if you're trying to do it with all of the different levels, is that very often we don't have enough light for a food forest to be truly effective. And also it can be a bit of a logistical nightmare. And so making it linear, just over 2 meters, 6 foot wide, it means we can keep an eye on things. It can be semi-wild, but there's maximum sun exposure. So all of these fruit trees, pears, plums, apples, etc., soft fruit, we're then going to integrate a lot of perennial herbs, and then even things like roses. It's going to link from those cob nuts, and then it's going to become this food forest, which actually brings me into the chickens, because these chickens here are very busy turning a lot of this hay into compost. We're going to be moving the chickens. This is going to become a fruit cage, but we're going to create a chicken forage forest, essentially a food forest for these chickens. And so what's going to happen, they're going to move to just below the cob nuts. We're going to plant up the chicken food forest, and they're going to have a little runway in between these blackcurrant bushes and the soft fruit cage to bring them out to this back open area where we're going to create a second chicken forage forest as well as a comfrey patch. So it's going to be exciting. This hay, which has come from the land, again fertility, what you do in order to reduce the weed issues with hay if you want to use it on annuals is, I'll grab a bit and I'll show you actually. This, you can see that the grass is growing through, the grass is sprouting. And so what we're doing is by putting the hay outside for a year, you've got the warm weather, you've got the cold weather, you've got the rain. And so the majority of the seeds within the hay will have germinated. And so that's a really simple way of sorting through all of the weed issues in hay. The alternative is to put hay in with the chickens, and then as it starts to germinate, the chickens are going to come through and eat out all of the weed seeds. And then again, this hay comes from the grass that grows so well here, but this eventually is all going to turn into beautiful compost for our annuals. And on the theme of perennials, and just to kind of finish off this little section, is these mushrooms here. We've done absolutely nothing to this hay. This is just mushrooms that are naturally coming out. There's some more there. So there's so much that goes on in life. I think it's very easy to forget when we're so focused on, say, annuals and perennials, that we forget about the whole fungi kingdom. And fungi very often link annuals and perennials in many different ways. And so seeing this life here where we've done nothing is giving me a lot of confidence. And it's always a nice reminder that fungi always exist, and if we can use them to our advantage, especially with perennials, to create that fertility for the annuals, then that's a fantastic thing.